first thing I notice is the sound. Not an alarm, not a notification, nothing sharp or sudden, just rain, soft and steady against the window, a gentle kind of waking, the kind that does not pull you out of sleep, but simply lets you rise to the surface of it, slowly, like something floating up through still water. I lie there for a moment, eyes still closed, just listening. The rain has a particular sound in the morning, different from the rain at night, lighter somehow, less dramatic, more like the sky simply continuing a quiet conversation it started hours ago, long before either of us woke up. There is a word for the very first part of the day, the hours right around sunrise, soft and uncertain and full of possibility. Dawn. D-A-W-N. Dawn. Dawn describes the early part of the day when light first begins to appear, before the sun has properly risen, when the sky is still soft grey or pale blue rather than bright. This morning, dawn arrived quietly behind a wall of rain clouds, so there was no dramatic burst of colour, just a slow lightening, grey turning to lighter grey, until I realised, somewhere in the middle of it, that it was morning. You can say, we watched the dawn break over the hills, or I woke at dawn to the sound of rain. Dawn, the day's first quiet breath. I get up slowly, no rush this morning, nowhere urgent to be. I pull on a soft jumper, the kind that has gone slightly shapeless from being worn too many mornings exactly like this one, and I pad through to the kitchen in socked feet, the floor cool beneath them, the whole house still half asleep around me. Outside the kitchen window, the garden is doing what gardens do in the rain, holding very still, every leaf bent slightly under the weight of water, every surface dark and glossy and quietly glistening. There is a word for that wet, shining quality, the way light catches on something covered in water. Glisten. G-L-I-S-T-E-N. Glisten. To glisten means to shine softly, especially because something is wet, catching small points of light across its surface. The grass glistens this morning, the leaves on the rosebush by the back step glisten. Even the spider's web stretched between two fence posts glistens, each tiny drop along its threads catching the pale morning light like a string of very small, very patient lanterns. You can say, the wet pavement glistened under the streetlights, or her eyes glistened with tears of joy. Glisten. The world wearing its rain like jewellery. I fill the kettle and set it on the stove, and while I wait, I stand by the window and watch the rain continue its slow work. Not heavy this morning, not the kind of rain that announces itself, just a steady, gentle falling, the kind that seems to ask nothing of the world except permission to continue. There is a word for rain that is light and fine, amongst a mist you could walk through without truly getting wet. Drizzle. D-R-I-Z-Z-L-E. Drizzle. Drizzle describes very light rain, falling in fine, small drops, softer and gentler than what we usually think of as rain. This morning is not quite drizzle, the drops are a little too definite for that, but it sits close to it, a rain that has decided to be patient rather than dramatic, a rain that could continue gently for the rest of the day and nobody would mind very much at all. You can say, it was only a light drizzle so we walked anyway, or A fine drizzle hung in the air all morning. Drizzle, rain, speaking very softly. The kettle starts to murmur, that low building sound, just before it begins to whistle properly, and I take down my favorite mug from the shelf. You probably have one too, a mug that has nothing particularly special about it, except that it has become, somehow, exactly the right shape and weight for your hands. Mine is a deep cream color, slightly chipped on the handle, and it has held 1,000 mornings exactly like this one. There is a word for something that has become familiar and comfortable through long repeated use. Well-worn. W-E-L-W-O-R-N. Well-worn. Well-worn describes something that shows the gentle marks of being used often and loved, not damaged exactly, just softened, the edges smoothed by repetition and care. My mug is well-worn. My morning routine is well-worn. Even this particular kind of rainy morning feels well-worn, familiar in a way that asks nothing new of me, just the comfort of doing something gently, again, the way I have done it many times before. You can say, he carried a well-worn book everywhere he went, or the path through the woods was well-worn for years of walking. Well-worn. Comfort built slowly, one ordinary day at a time. I spoon the coffee into the small metal filter, slow and unhurried, watching the dark grounds settle into a small, neat mound. There is something almost meditative about this part of the morning. Measuring, pouring, waiting. No part of it requiring any real thought at all, which leaves plenty of room for simply standing here, half awake, listening to the rain. There is a word for an activity that calms the mind through quiet, repeated focus. Meditative. M-E-D-I-T-A-T-I-V-E. Meditative. Meditative describes something calm and thoughtful, often involving simple, repeated movements that quiet the busy parts of the mind. Making coffee slowly, like this, is meditative. So is watching rain fall. So is simply standing at a window with nothing urgent to do, letting your thoughts settle the way coffee grounds settle at the bottom of a cup. You can say, gardening is a meditative activity for her, or there was something meditative about the steady rhythm of the rain. Meditative. The mind, quietly, settling. The hot water hits the grounds, and that first rich smell rises up, warm and slightly bitter and deeply familiar. The smell that means morning has properly begun, no matter how quiet or unhurried the rest of it might be. I pour slowly, in small circles, the way I was taught once by someone I do not see very often anymore, and I watch the coffee bloom and darken in the filter, little bubbles rising and settling, the whole kitchen filling with that good dark smell. There is a word for a smell or quality that fills a space completely, reaching every corner. Permeate. P-E-R-M-E-A-T-E. Permeate. To permeate means to spread through and fill every part of something, the way a smell can permeate a whole room, or the way a feeling can permeate a whole day. The smell of coffee permeates the kitchen this morning, reaching into corners I am not even standing near, and somehow that smell, permeating everything, makes the whole house feel a little more awake, a little more alive, even with the rain still falling steadily outside. You can say, the scent of fresh bread permeated the entire bakery, or a sense of calm seemed to permeate the room. Permeate. Something good, reaching everywhere. I carry my coffee to the window seat, an old armchair pulled close to the glass, cushions slightly flattened from years of mornings spent exactly here. I tuck my feet up beneath me and wrap both hands around the mug, letting the warmth seep into my palms, and I simply watch the rain for a while, doing nothing else at all. There is a word for liquid slowly moving into or through something, gradually and gently. Seep. S-E-E-P. Seep. To seep means to flow or spread slowly and gradually, often through a small space, often quietly. The warmth from this mug seeps into my hands. Rain seeps slowly into dry soil after a long stretch without it. And this morning, this particular kind of calm seems to seep into me too, slowly, without any effort on my part at all, just from sitting here, still, watching the rain. You can say water had seeped through a crack in the old roof, or a sense of peace seemed to seep slowly through her. Seep. Calm, arriving, without announcement. Through the window, the street is mostly empty, early enough still that the world has not properly started its day. Just the occasional car moving slowly through the wet road, headlights catching the rain and turning it briefly silver, tires making that long, soft tearing sound against the water on the tarmac, before the quiet returns again. There is a word for something happening only occasionally, with gaps of quiet time between each occurrence. Sporadic. S-P-O-R-O-D-I-C. Sporadic. Sporadic describes something that happens occasionally and without a regular pattern, appearing and disappearing, here then gone. The traffic this morning is sporadic, a car passing, then nothing for several minutes, then another. The rain itself is almost sporadic in its intensity, heavier for a moment, then softer, never quite settling into one single rhythm for very long. You can say there were sporadic bursts of sunshine between the clouds, or communication between them had become sporadic, quiet, interrupted gently now and then. I take my first proper sip of coffee, and it is, as always, exactly what I needed. Warm and slightly bitter and grounding in a way that is hard to explain to anyone who does not feel the same way about their own morning cup. There is a small, private kind of happiness in this moment. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would make a good story to tell anyone else. Just a quiet, warm, rainy morning and a cup of coffee and nowhere urgent to be. There is a word for a feeling of deep contentment, settled and quiet rather than loud or excited. Contentment. C-O-N-T-E-N-T-M-E-N-T. Contentment. Contentment describes a calm, satisfied happipiness, not the kind that comes from excitement or achievement, but the kind that simply settles in when everything around you feels, for a while, exactly right. This morning is full of contentment, not because anything special is happening, precisely because nothing special is happening at all. Just rain and coffee and quiet and a small armchair by a window, and that is, somehow, more than enough. You can say there was a deep sense of contentment in the room, or she felt a quiet contentment sitting there with her tea. Contentment, happiness that does not need to announce itself. I think sometimes that mornings like this are underrated. We spend so much energy chasing exciting things, big plans, big achievements, and so little time simply appreciating an ordinary, quiet, rainy start to the day. But there is something here worth noticing. The way the rain softens every sound outside, the way the warmth of the mug spreads slowly through cold hands, the way the whole morning seems to be giving permission to simply exist for a while, without doing very much at all. There is a word for something valued less than it actually deserves. Underrated. 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 Underrated describes something that does not receive as much appreciation or attention as it truly deserves, often because it is quiet or ordinary or easy to overlook. A quiet, rainy morning like this is underrated. So is the simple pleasure of a really good cup of coffee. So is doing absolutely nothing for half an hour, just sitting, just breathing, just watching the world go quietly about its business outside the glass. You can say, I think slow mornings are completely underrated. Or, that little cafe is underrated. Hardly anyone knows about it. Underrated. Worth more than it usually gets credit for. I think about toast briefly, the way you do on slow mornings like this. Not out of real hunger yet, just a passing thought of something warm and simple. Maybe later. For now, the coffee is enough, and there is something nice about not rushing even the idea of breakfast, letting hunger arrive in its own time, the way everything else this morning seems content to do. There is a word for food eaten as the very first meal of the day. Breakfast, of course. You likely already know this one, but let us look instead at a gentler word for the leisurely version of it. Leisurely. 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 Leisurely describes something done without hurry, slowly and comfortably, taking exactly as long as it wants to take. A leisurely breakfast, a leisurely walk, a leisurely morning like this one, where the only real plan is to have no particular plan at all, and to let each small task, the coffee, the quiet, the watching of rain, unfold exactly as slowly as it needs to. You can say, we had a leisurely lunch by the river, or she enjoys a leisurely start to her weekends. Leisurely. Time taken generously. I notice the rain has eased slightly while I've been sitting here, not stopped, just softened, the heavier patter of earlier settling into something gentler now, almost a mist now against the glass. Weather does this, builds and softens and builds again, never quite staying in one single mood for the whole of a morning. There is a word for something that becomes gradually less intense or severe. Ease. E-A-S-E. Ease. To ease as a verb means to gradually lessen or become less intense, like pain easing after medicine or traffic easing after rush hour. The rain has eased this morning from a proper, steady fall to something closer to a fine mist, still present, still visible against the grey light, but gentler now, quieter, as though the sky itself has decided to take a slower pace too, matching the mood of this whole unhurried morning. You can say, the pain in my shoulder finally started to ease, or traffic eased once we got past the city centre. Ease, intensity, slowly letting go. I think about the people who might be out in this rain right now, despite the early hour. Someone walking a dog, perhaps, collar turned up against the wet. Someone cycling to an early shift somewhere, headlamp cutting a small bright path through the grey. I feel a small, quiet gratitude sitting here, not because their morning is somehow worse than mine, but simply because I'm noticing clearly how fortunate this particular kind of stillness actually is. There is a word for a feeling of being thankful, especially for something you might otherwise take for granted. Gratitude. 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 Gratitude describes a deep feeling of thankfulness and appreciation, often for small, ordinary things that are easy to overlook. This morning brings a quiet gratitude for the warm chair, for the coffee still faintly warm in the bottom of the cup, for the simple, ordinary fact of having nowhere I need to be, and a window through which to watch the rain, easing now, gently into something even softer. You can say, I felt a real sense of gratitude for my family that day, or keeping a gratitude journal has helped her notice small good things. Gratitude, noticing and being thankful for what is already here. I top up my coffee and settle back into the armchair, pulling a small blanket over my knees, and I let my mind wander a little, the way it likes to on mornings like this. Not towards anything in particular, just gently, the way the rain itself seems to move, from one thought to the next, without urgency, without destination. There is a word for thinking about the future with hope and pleasant expectation. Look forward to, a phrase this time rather than a single word, but a useful one. Look forward to. To look forward to something means to feel happy anticipation about it before it happens, a small warmth in the chest when you think about it. This morning, I find myself looking forward to very small things. A second cup of coffee, perhaps, in an hour or so. The way the light might change if the rain eases later in the day. Nothing large, nothing that would impress anyone, just small, quiet things worth looking forward to. You can say, I'm really looking forward to the weekend. Or, she looked forward to her morning coffee more than almost anything else. Look forward to, a small, warm kind of hope. Outside, somewhere down the street, I hear the soft clatter of someone opening a shop shutter, the world slowly beginning to stir despite the rain, despite the early hour, life continuing the way it always does, gently in its own time. There is a word for a light, irregular knocking or clattering sound. Clatter. C-L-A-T-T-E-R. Clatter. Clatter describes a series of short, sharp knocking sounds, often when hard objects bump or scrape against each other. The metal shutter clatters as it rolls upward. Somewhere, a cup clatters gently against a saucer. These small, ordinary sounds, scattered here and there through the quiet rain, feel almost comforting, proof that the world is slowly waking up alongside me in its own unhurried way. You can say, I heard the clatter of dishes from the kitchen, or the old shutters clattered in the wind. Clatter, the small, friendly noise of morning beginning. I think about how differently this same rain might feel later in the day if I had somewhere urgent to be, an umbrella to fight with, a train to catch, shoes slowly soaking through on a rushed walk to somewhere important. But right now, with nowhere to be and nothing required of me, the very same rain feels completely different. Not an obstacle at all, just weather, just something happening outside while I sit warm and unbothered inside. There is a word for the particular quality or atmosphere created by light, weather, or surroundings. Ambience. A-M-B-I-E-N-C-E. Ambience. Ambience describes the overall feeling or atmosphere of a place, created by light, sound, temperature, and small details all together. This morning has a particular ambience: soft grey light, the steady sound of rain, the smell of coffee still hanging gently in the air, all of it combining into something larger than any single part, a whole quiet world contained inside this one small kitchen and this one small armchair by the window. You can say the restaurant had a really cozy ambience, or there was a peaceful ambience to the whole village. Ambience, the feeling a place holds. I finish my coffee slowly, in no real hurry to reach the bottom of the cup, and I think about what the rest of the day might hold. Nothing is decided yet. Maybe I will read for a while. Maybe I will simply stay here a little longer watching the rain, letting the mornings stretch out as long as it wants to. There is a particular freedom in not deciding anything too quickly, in letting a slow morning like this simply continue for as long as it needs to. There is a word for allowing something to continue or extend further than expected, gently, without resistance. Linger. L-I-N-G-E-R. Linger. Linger means to stay somewhere a little longer than necessary, reluctant to move on too quickly. This morning, I let myself linger, in the armchair, in the quiet, in the soft grey light and the steady rain and the last warm traces of coffee still in the bottom of the cup. There is no rule that says a good morning has to end on time. Some mornings deserve to be lingered in.
You can say, "We lingered over breakfast, in no hurry to leave," or "The smell of rain lingered in the garden long after it had stopped." Linger. Staying just a little longer than you need to. I glance over at the small stack of books on the side table, something I started reading weeks ago and never quite finished. Not because it was uninteresting, just because life kept moving faster than the reading of it. This morning, though, feels like the right kind of morning for picking it back up. No pressure to finish it, just a few pages, read slowly, with the rain still falling gently outside. There is a word for returning to something you set aside, picking it up again after a pause. Resume. R-E-S-U-M-E. Resume. To resume means to begin again after a break or pause, continuing from wherever you left off. I resume my book this morning, finding the page I left, the corner gently folded down. There is something satisfying about resuming something slowly rather than rushing to finish it, letting a story unfold over many quiet mornings rather than racing through it all at once. You can say, after the break, the meeting resumed at 10, or she resumed her painting after a long pause. Resume, picking up gently exactly where you left off. I read a few pages, the words moving slowly through my mind the way the rain moves down the glass, unhurried, each sentence given its proper time before the next one arrives. Outside somewhere, a bird finally tries its voice, a single tentative note, testing whether the rain has eased enough yet. It has, almost. There is a word for something done carefully and cautiously, testing whether conditions are right. Tentative. T-E-N-T-A-T-I-V-E. Tentative. Tentative describes something hesitant, not fully certain, testing the situation before committing fully. The bird's first song this morning is tentative, a single careful note rather than a full chorus, checking almost whether the morning is truly ready for singing yet. There is something lovely about that carefulness, that small gentle testing of the day before fully committing to it. You can say, "She gave a tentative smile, unsure how he would react," or "They took a few tentative steps onto the ice." Tentative, carefulness before commitment. I want to give you a few small phrases now, gentle English for slow mornings like this one, for rain, for coffee, for the particular comfort of having nowhere urgent to be. The first phrase, take it slow, used to encourage a relaxed, unhurried pace. No need to rush this morning, just take it slow. A gentle permission given to yourself or to someone else. The second phrase, there's no place I'd rather be, used to express deep contentment with the present moment. Rain on the window, coffee in hand, there's no place I'd rather be. A small, complete kind of happiness, held in just a few simple words. The third phrase, let the day come to me, used to describe an unhurried, open approach to the day ahead, with no fixed plans. I don't have anything planned, I'll just let the day come to me. A quiet trust that the day will unfold gently in its own good time. And the fourth phrase, soak it all in, used to describe fully noticing and appreciating a pleasant moment. Just sit there and soak it all in. A small reminder to be fully present for moments exactly like this one. The words from this morning, dawn, glisten, drizzle, well-worn, meditative, permeate, seep, sporadic, contentment, underrated, look forward to, clatter, ambiance, leisurely, ease, gratitude, resume, tentative, linger. Words for slow mornings, gentle rain, and coffee taken without hurry. The phrases, take it slow, there's no place I'd rather be, let the day come to me, soak it all in. I sit a while longer, the rain still falling steadily outside, the house warm and quiet around me, and I think this might be one of my favorite kinds of mornings. Not the bright, busy kind, full of plans and energy and things to accomplish. Just this. Rain on the glass, a warm mug, empty now but still pleasant to hold. A soft chair, a soft blanket, and absolutely nowhere I need to be. Wherever you are listening from today, I hope your own morning, whatever the weather, gives you a little of this same quiet. A little permission to slow down, a little space to simply sit and breathe and let the day arrive gently in its own good time. Wherever your day takes you from here, I hope you carry a little of this morning with you. The soft rain, the warm cup, the quiet, unhurried feeling of a day that has not yet decided to rush anywhere at all. Take care of yourself today. Move slowly if you can. Let yourself linger just a little in the small good things. And if the rain finds your window too, let it remind you, gently, that slow mornings are some of the very best ones. Goodbye for now. May your coffee be warm, may your morning be slow, and may the rain, wherever you are, fall as gently on your window as it has on mine.